In exercise 10-6, we considered a case of Vitapup and its production budget. So now what we're going to do is develop the production budget from expected sales units. So as we see here in row 4, we have expected sales for January, February, March, and April. And what we're asked to do is prepare a production budget for the first 3 months. Now, we are given the 4th month of information because this will be included in our planned production. So planned production in a month contemplates future production in the sense of we have a desired ending inventory that it will be 15% of next month's sales. So that's the rule or protocol that we would want to have in terms of determining the production budget. So if we, so I can just link back up to Vitapup here, and we'll do production budget. And since we'll be doing this over January, February, and March, we'll merge and center here these individually. Unfortunately, we have to do these individually. Excel gets a little bit worked up if we don't. So then for January, February, March, and we will center these individually and go here. So in determining the production needs, we would start off with our expected sales for the month. So in this case, we have 13,000, 14,900, and 19,400 for each of these months, plus our desired ending inventory number in terms of units. Let me undo that for a second. That's a little bit too big there. Let me see if I can expand it. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So in January, we want to produce enough to have our unit sales, but then we also want to have some on hand at the end of the month. And in particular, that is that 15% number of February sales. So 15% of the 14,900. That's what we would want to have on hand because, maybe at the end of January or early February, we'll be making some sales and we want to make sure we have enough on hand. I hate to send a customer or potential customer to a competitor and say, well, we don't have any dog food, move along. So this amount, 15% of 14,900, is our budgeted or goal for the ending inventory at the end of January. Since this is moving forward, we were going to have to lock the D7 cell because that's the one that has the percentage, and then we just merely copy this forward. And then sum, and the subtotal will be production needs. Now, that's what, so ultimately we're going to have we want to be able to cover our current sales and 15% of next month's sales. Well, ultimately we would have to do 15,235. That's our desire. So now what we have to do then is reduce this by what do we have in terms of beginning inventory. And I want to skip ahead here to February now. So in February, we had production, we had sales, we've anticipated sales of 14,900. But at the beginning of the month, we had 2235 in anticipation of this. So really what we want to do is contemplate that we have this. So January's ending inventory becomes February's beginning inventory. So even though we have 17,810 in total production needs, we already have some in beginning inventory. So the required production in February won't be 17,810. It will be somewhat less. And to determine the somewhat less, we take the 17,810, subtract the 2235, and so we'd have 15,575 as our required production for February, and correspondingly to 19,790 for March. Now I skipped ahead here because I want to make sure that we get this, and it's sort of a pet peeve of mine, and that is that if the rule is 15%, then what should January's beginning inventory have been? Well, we are told that January's beginning inventory was 1,300 bags, and so that's just merely going to be inputted here. And so then that would mean that our required production is 13,935 for January. Well, as I just, intimated, well, what was the rule? Well, the rule was that we're supposed to have 15% of the current month. So in other words, if we take 22,335 and divide by 14,9, we have the 15% number. So really what we should have had in January, even though we were just given this number here, this number really should have been 15% of the 13,000, which would have been 1950. So notice that we would have 650 fewer units to make in January if we actually were obeying that rule of the 15% of the next month's sales. It's a pet peeve of mine in the sense that this cell here is something that they say, well, here's the rule, but I guess it's sort of like, well, starting now we're going to do this. And so maybe I think it's a simplification that authors often do, but really this schedule should be tying back to what December's production was in December. And in fact, December did not have, if December had 1,300 units as what would be indicated here in the ending inventory, which corresponds to January's beginning inventory of 1,300. Well, then that really was, putting January in a bind, and so we're having to produce more in January than what we really should have.